All right, let's talk about something that's absolutely critical for anyone running things in the cloud. How do you actually protect your digital stuff? Today, we're going to build a rock-solid data strategy in Azure. And I mean, we're going way beyond just making a backup. We're talking about a recovery plan you can bet the house on.
So, first things first, why are we even having this conversation? Well, because before you can even think about building a solid protection plan, you have to get one thing straight. You have to accept a simple, kind of scary truth about our digital lives.
And I mean, really stop and think about this for a second. I'm not talking about some abstract idea. I'm talking about your data, your main application, all those customer records, your financial reports. What do you do when, on a totally normal Tuesday afternoon, it all just vanishes?
Look, here's the bottom line. Data loss isn't a question of if it's going to happen, it's a question of when. You know, it could be something as simple as a classic fat finger mistake, someone deletes the wrong virtual machine, or maybe it's a sneaky software bug that quietly corrupts your files over time. It doesn't really matter how it happens. The point is, it's not a possibility, it's a certainty. The only thing you don't know is the date on the calendar. Okay, so if we know for a fact that disaster's on the horizon, what's our move? How do we prepare for it? Simple. We build ourselves a digital bunker, and the foundation of that bunker, the very first thing we need to lay down in Azure, is all about understanding storage redundancy. Let's start with the basics. Local redundant storage, or LRS for short. Honestly, think of this as your first line of defense against the small stuff. Azure automatically, behind the scenes, keeps 3 copies of your data inside a single data center, but on different hardware racks. So if a single disk drive dies or a server goes kaput, no big deal. Your data is safe. It's the default setting for a reason, and it's a solid start. Okay, now we're leveling up with Zone Redundant Storage, or ZRS. This takes that same idea of 3 copies and just blows it up. Instead of just different racks in the same building, ZRS spreads your data across 3 totally separate buildings, what Azure calls availability zones, all within the same geographic region. So now you're not just safe from a failed server, you're protected if a whole data center goes down. We're talking a power outage, a flood, a much bigger problem.
And then there's the top tier, the ultimate in automated protection, Geo-Redundant Storage, or GRS. This is your ace in the hole for a really, really bad day, a massive regional-level disaster. With GRS, you still get your 3 copies of data locally, but then Azure also copies all of that to a completely different region, often hundreds of miles away. This is for when things go seriously wrong. So, you've got these options. How in the world do you choose? Well, let's just break it down nice and simple. LRS is your cheapest option, and it's great for protecting against something small, like a single hardware failure. ZRS is that middle ground. It protects you if an entire building goes offline. And GRS, that's your insurance policy against a whole region going down. So the choice really comes down to a simple question you have to ask yourself. How important is this data, and what kind of disaster do you need to be able to survive? All right, so that storage redundancy stuff is fantastic for, your files, your disk images, your blobs, but what about the real heart of your application? I'm talking about your databases. These are the crown jewels, right? And protecting them, well, that needs a whole different level of thinking. This is where we go from just letting Azure handle it automatically to taking active control. Things like the Azure Backup Service give you these super consistent backups, but the real magic is something called point-in-time restore. Imagine being able to literally rewind your database to the exact minute before everything went wrong. It's like a time machine for your data. And for the absolute must-not-fail stuff, geo-replication gives you a live running copy of your database in another region, ready to take over in a heartbeat. Okay, you've done it all. You've got GRS on your storage, you've got Azure Backup running on your databases. You're golden. Totally protected, right? Wrong. And this right here, this is probably the single most important point we're going to talk about today. We need to shatter a really dangerous myth. Just read that for a second. Let it really sink in. An untested backup is not a strategy. It's just a hope. Because this idea, this is the hidden reef that sinks so many disaster recovery plans. You see, just having a backup makes you feel safe. But that feeling, it could be a complete illusion. I want you to picture this. It's 3 a.m. and your phone is blowing up. PagerDuty is screaming, your main database is completely corrupted, the company is literally losing thousands of dollars every minute you're down. Your boss is on the line and they are not happy. You go to the console, you find the backup, and you click Restore. Now, be honest with yourself. In that moment,
Are you absolutely 100% certain it's going to work? Or are you just closing your eyes and praying?
Because here's the thing, hope is not a strategy. Testing is, and it doesn't have to be this big, scary process. It's actually pretty straightforward. Step 1, you set up an isolated test environment. And please, for the love of all that is holy, do not do this in production. Step 2, you kick off a full restore, just like you would in a real emergency. Step 3 is the most important. You actually validate it. You run some queries, try to connect your app to it, make sure the data looks right, you prove it works. And finally, you write down what you did, how long it took, and any snags you hit along the way.
All right, let's bring this all home. I want to pull everything we've talked about into a simple, straightforward action plan. Something you can literally take and use to check out your own setup tomorrow.
Here it is, your resilience checklist. First, figure out what's important. Classify your data, because trust me, not everything needs the GRS treatment. Second, pick the right tool for the job. Match that data to the right redundancy level, LRS, ZRS, or GRS. Third, for the really important stuff like your databases and VMs, make sure you're using Azure Backup for that fine-grained control. And finally, the one that truly matters, the one that separates a real strategy from a hopeful wish, you've got to schedule and actually do regular restore tests. And write it all down.
So I'm going to leave you with this one simple question to take back to your team, or just to think about for yourself. When it comes to your most critical data, is your plan B a proven, tested strategy, or is it just a wish? Because when disaster finally strikes, and it will, the answer to that question is everything.